For those of you who can remember, my fellow representatives, in 1994, this body considered an audacious piece of legislation to create a free trade zone between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. However, it's because of the failure of that original dream and because of the flawed nature of NAFTA that I urge all of us in this room to pass today's piece of legislation. Item number 3, a resolution to renegotiate NAFTA to access its impacts. Now, I urge this for 2 key reasons. First, because of the effect that NAFTA has had on American employment. And second, because of the effect that NAFTA has had on undocumented immigration to the United States. First, representatives, let's look at the effect that NAFTA has had on American employment. Now, many people in this room will argue that the United States has recovered fully from the financial crisis of 2007, especially in terms of employment. However, my fellow representatives, if you make this argument, you're simply arguing against the facts. Because we were told by Real Clear Markets just 2 days ago that the United States' 7.4% unemployment rate is a full 3 percentage points higher than it was before the recession. How can this be? The answer, simply stated, is NAFTA. As we were told by the Economic Policy Institute on May the 3rd of this year, over the first 16 years of NAFTA, the United States developed a $97 billion trade deficit between ourselves and Mexico. Mostly, this is represented by American manufacturing jobs being displaced and moved to Mexico because of a lack of tariffs protecting American industry in the United States. This means fewer American manufacturing jobs in places like Detroit, places like Ohio, places like Indiana, where the unemployment rate remains high. My fellow representatives, our voters there do not believe that this recession is over. Don't turn your back on them. We need to pass this legislation so we can have the tariffs that we need to ensure that American manufacturing in the Rust Belt is restored to where it was before the recession. However, let's turn to the second reason why we need to pass this legislation, because of the effect that NAFTA has had on immigration to the United States. Now, many of us in this room ultimately will argue that NAFTA has had a positive effect on undocumented immigration to the United States because it's created more favorable working situations in Mexico. However, again, if you make this argument, you're arguing against simple data. As we were told by the Environmental Working Group on June the 1st of 2013, the United States, as a result of NAFTA, has passed some $83 billion worth of corn agricultural subsidies since NAFTA's passage. Now, because of this, it's completely flooded the North American corn market and made it impossible for millions of Mexican corn farmers to make their produce. Thus, these Mexican corn farmers have lower economic opportunity in Mexico and increases their incentive to migrate to the United States, explaining why the migration rate has gone up and not down since 1994. So, my fellow voters, because of the interest of our voters, of our country, we need to pass today's legislation and correct the problem that we created with NAFTA.